she suggests that kids should go out for 4 to 6 hours a day, on whenever the weather is tolerable. And I just thought, well, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Who is this Charlotte Mason? What does she know?
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. If you are watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to do something. We never ask this for our YouTube watchers, but we would love for you to like it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then share this with your friends. Most people, I don't know if you know, but most of these videos are on YouTube. So we record the podcast. Most listen to it, via a podcast app. But we also put these up as videos. And so a lot of people will just watch them because if you're like me, you enjoy the visual aspect. You want to actually see the people. And so if you are watching this, we would love it if you would like, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you are listening to it, welcome. Welcome to the Schoolhouse Rock podcast. We are so glad that you are back with us this week. And as always, I have a great guest with me on today. Her name is Ginny Yurich. And some of you, actually probably many of you, are very familiar with her. She is the founder, author of 1,000 Hours Outside. It is a blog. Would you call it a blog, Ginny? A blog, website,
blog.
So many things.
The movement. Sure.
Yeah, a movement. And we are going to talk about that today. Ginny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Yvette. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you. We got to meet back in September, I think it was, when you and I were together at the State Leaders Alliance Convention in Georgia. And that was an amazing time that we got to spend together and just learning about all of the state organizations, which we've talked about many times on the podcast. And you are actually part of Mission, is how it's pronounced. It's the Michigan Christian Homeschool Network. You're one of the volunteer state organization board leaders there. So we got to meet there and we got to talking, and somehow I found out that you were the 1,000 Hours Outside girl. And I said, I want to get you on the podcast and let's talk about being outside. So
thanks for having me. It was so awesome to meet there.
Yes, it was. I was just such an incredible group of parents and leaders who really have a passion for the homeschool community. And so I appreciate that you have that passion as well. Introduce us to yourself and your family.
Sure. So I'm Ginny. My husband is Josh. We live in Michigan. We call the land of the hand. Except that my shirt's got a thing on it. I can't this way. I don't know. The land of the hand. So we're in Michigan. We have 5 kids, ages 12 down to 4, boy, girl, girl. We tipped girl at the end. And we have been homeschooling from the beginning. We are on a little farm, like a little hobby farm here in Michigan, which is actually a new thing for us. We moved here just a little over a year ago from a neighborhood. And so this has been kind of a fun learning experience and growing experience for us.
So fun. The first time I ever heard the term hobby farm was from Karen DeBuse. And I'm sure that's like a term that, people use all the time. But again, I'm a city girl, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today, because we're talking about the outdoors. And as much as I try to be, I'm not naturally an outdoors person, but I love the outdoors. But I never had heard the term hobby farm before, but it just sounds so cute. It sounds like a miniature farm.
Like, we're a farm, but we're not farming for other people.
Right.
It's just sort of for our own personal family and enjoyment and friends and that sort of thing.
So do you have animals, I'm assuming?
We do have animals. Yeah, we have chickens and cows and goats. So nice. I think we've hit the real farm status. Some of those are new. We have barn cats.
Oh, fun. You got to have barn cats to get the rodents.
Great. Yeah, for sure.
Do you milk the cows?
We do not. No, but we have milked the goats.
Okay.
It's been a learning experience. All of it. It's all brand new to us. So learning for us and for the kids.
Yes. So much fun. We're from California. We're from Los Angeles. And since moving out of Los Angeles and kind of making our way across the country, we have met many people who have farms, little hobby farms. And it's been so much fun to get to know people who have these little farms and they grow their own, just vegetables and things for their families and herbs and all that stuff. And then they have animals and they get eggs in the morning and their kids will go and gather the eggs. And I'm like, it's just so much fun. And so I dream of one day having a hobby farm, but I'm not a big animal person. And so I don't know how well I would take care of them.
Maybe stick with the city.
No, I don't want the city. That's the problem.
Oh, okay.
I do not want city life.
The kids can take care of the animals.
Right.
and bring you your eggs. You'll be all set.
Right. Right. I will cook the eggs.
There you go.
Though,
There you
for
go.
anyone who's listened to the podcast for any length of time, you know that I don't really enjoy cooking either. So I need help, apparently. Oh, goodness gracious.
Tell us what you do enjoy.
Right. I enjoy time with my family. That is
Yeah.
what I enjoy. Like I genuinely, that is my favorite thing is I love time with my family. And as we're thinking about the outdoors, we went camping. My girls do American Heritage Girls. And so a few weeks ago, we went on a camping trip and it was the second, I have been camping before, but each time I've been camping, it's always been where someone else has been in charge of the food and
Mhm.
the, just getting camp
The
set up and all
logistics.
of that, the
Sure.
logistics of it. And most of those times have been in an RV. We lived in an RV for 2.5 years at the beginning of this crazy Schoolhouse Rock journey. So I can do that, but the like going camping and being outside and having to figure out all of our own food and setting up tents. This is a few weeks ago. That was the second time I had ever done that with my girls. And as I was outside and just enjoying God's amazing creation, I just was like, I love this. I love being
Mhm.
outside because I didn't grow up as an outdoorsy kind of girl ever. I mean, I still don't like to get my hands dirty. It's just this weird thing I have. I don't like to dig in the dirt and do those things because I didn't grow up doing that. And so as I was outside camping with my girls, I just thought this is it's so life-giving. It's so
Mhm.
refreshing. And you just feel like there's so much rest in
Mhm.
being in the middle of the forest in God's creation. And
Mhm.
so I would love for you to talk about your passion for getting our kids outside, getting them outdoors. Where did that passion come from? Did you grow up like that? Did this just kind of come about as you became a mother? Where does that come from?
It did come about as I became a mother. I think the 1,000 hours outside is just our journey, and it has become something that we share because it's been so powerful. We have, the five kids, and the first three are really close in age. They were two and under at one point, so they were two, one, and a baby.
Wow.
And as a new mom, I didn't really know what to do with them. I remember right before our first son was born, having this thought of, "Well, what are we gonna do all day?" You know? And
Yeah.
so I had some friends who had kids, and some of them did schedules, and, some of my friends were like, you eat, and they nurse, and then you have an activity, and then they sleep, and then you do it again." So I was sort of playing with this idea of, like, breaking our day up into these segments, but it never worked. Like, from the get-go, the baby didn't wanna do the schedule.
Right.
He, like, wanted to eat all the time, and he didn't wanna sleep, and so I felt lost actually for a very long time, with our kids, not really knowing how to make it through the day. And my husband commuted; he was gone for 10 hours. It was
Mm,
hour commute, and so I was in a rough spot. I was excited to be a mom, but really overwhelmed with the needs of small children, and so I enrolled the kids in classes, sort of like what I saw other people doing, and so that's what we did. And we would do like the library program and all things that are great, the swim lessons and mops and these different music class. And it was expensive, and it was awful. It was kind of awful, because it was really hard to do. It
yeah,
was hard to manage, to get three kids into a car, and get them out of the car and have all their
right.
things and get them into the library, and no one's finger get pinched. And when it would last 45 minutes, and I would come home and I would think, "Oh, I still have, 7 hours before my husband comes home, and I'm exhausted." So so that's sort of how we were living, and I feel like I was barely surviving. And I think, as life goes, sometimes these really small moments, like, people just speak the truth that they know, and it changes your whole course. I had a friend at MOPS, and she had kids that were 1 year older than me, and so she was going to be homeschooling, and so were we. And she was starting to research, a little ahead of us, because her child, her oldest, was 1 year. further along. And so she said, I've been reading about this Charlotte Mason, and I've never heard of Charlotte Mason.
Right.
She said she suggests that kids should go out for 4 to 6 hours a day, on whenever the weather is tolerable. And I just thought, well, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Who is this Charlotte Mason? What does she know? And I thought, because all the activities are like a half hour or
Right.
45 minutes, and we've never done anything at that length of time. So, when you're a new mom, you want to build relationships, you want to have friends. So, she invited us to go to the park for 4 hours. And I thought, well, this is really silly, but I'm going to go. And so our plan was to go to this park. And the park didn't have like a play set. It was just like a grassy, big field. And there was a creek that ran through, and there were ducks. And she said, let's go from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon and pack a picnic lunch. So, okay, how is this going to go? And I tell you what, Yvette, that one day changed my entire parenting philosophy. It
Wow.
changed my entire life because I sat on a picnic blanket with my baby, and she had a baby, and we nursed our babies, and we had conversation.
Mm.
And the kids, we each had two older ones, like 1 and 3, or so, and they just ran around. They jumped off of the stumps, and they were chasing, and they're throwing rocks in the creek. And I left at 1 o'clock, and we went home, and some of them napped. And it was the first day I had hope, like, oh my goodness, I
Wow.
can do this. Um, and so because it went so well, we changed our lifestyle. We started with a couple of these families, and we would get together a couple times a week for about 4 hours. And it was just to pass the time at the beginning. Like, it was like life-giving to me and to my kids. And so we sort of changed how we were parenting. And in time, I learned that outdoor play benefits kids in every single facet of their development. It helps their brains grow. It helps them academically. There's so much there. It helps them physically. The sunlight helps our physical bodies.
Mhm.
And obviously the movement, helps their bones be stronger. It helps them socially, in so many aspects. It helps emotionally, obviously, with that sort of rest and recharge. And then it really helps them spiritually. We're seeing the hand of God, and we're seeing miracles all the time.
Yeah.
And all of these sort of biblical lessons that, when it talks in Deuteronomy 6 about when you walk by the way, you can say, look at the variety of birds, or look at the variety of trees. And God is a lover of variety. And so
Yeah.
it's okay that you're not exactly like your brother or your sister or your friend, or there's so many spiritual lessons that I was always sort of confused by those verses in Deuteronomy, like the walk by the way, because I thought, well,
Right.
this would be really contrived. I'm
Right.
like, how am I supposed to talk about God's principles? But then when you're outside, you see his hand.
Yeah.
And so it gives way for you to have these very natural conversations about seed time and harvest and soil. And so our journey was that we shifted the way that we were living, and in time really learned that there's so much research to back um, getting kids outside.
Yeah.
The simple thing, God made it easy for us. And I'm a math, we were talking about this earlier, but I'm a math major. And so someday I just thought, I wonder how much time we're spending outside. And I added it up. We were like 18 to 20 hours a week, because we were doing this little nature group, a
Yeah.
couple days
Wow.
a week. And it added up to 1,200 hours a year. And I had just read that 1,200 hours a year is the average amount of American kids' screen time.
Wow.
And what struck me was how much kids are missing out.
Right.
That's what struck me. It's not that necessarily screens are evil, but
Mhm.
I could look back on a year's worth of time and think, look at all the things we did,
Yeah.
and think we would have missed out. And so that was sort of the impetus to 1,000 hours outside. We were never running into other children ever. And we're in a populated area, very
Yeah.
populated. And so we would be at these parks for 4 hours or 6 hours and not see one other kid. And that
Wow.
lasted for a couple years. So I just thought, I'm going to share my journey because I was in such a dark place, and this brought me out. And so since then, it's sort of become a global movement. It is this simplest premise that the amount of time our kids spend outside matters, and that is actually a message of hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's good for all of us. And so
Yeah.
that's sort of where it came from. And here I'm sitting with you.
That is amazing. That is truly an incredible testimony. And just so neat how the Lord took you out into his creation and just here, this is what you need. We tend to think that
Mhm.
our kids need things. And as we're heading into the Christmas season, we tend to think, well, our kids need more toys, and I see it posted all over Facebook all the time, what are you buying your kids for Christmas? What's the new toy? What's a great toy for a 12-year-old? And not that it's wrong or bad to have toys for your kids, but they don't need all of those things. And we learned that firsthand when we left in 2016. We left California to head out on this journey to film Schoolhouse Rocked. And we sold our 5-bedroom home and moved into a 260 square foot travel trailer. And we basically got rid of everything. I mean, we sold most of their toys. We still have some, but all of the things that we thought we needed, including all of our homeschool stuff, we found that we didn't need it. And my girls have not missed it. And they do have things because they can't be outside 24 hours a day. So they still have things, but I tried to have the things that they play. Well, I mean, my oldest is 15, so she doesn't play with toys anymore. Unless she's playing with her sister. She is good about that. But, even my 10-year-old and my oldest was almost 11 when we left. They had building blocks and they had art supplies and things like that kind of got their brains thinking. But we don't need all the indoor things that we think that we need, especially screens. You talked about screen time, and so God has really given us all that we need in order
He sure
to
has. What
enjoy
a
life.
message, right?
I know
He has given.
he
Mhm.
is faithful that way. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. We're going to talk more about this. Did you miss the 2020 Homegrown Generation Family Expo? If so, you can now have full access to the entire expo for just $10. You'll enjoy practical homeschooling encouragement, advice, and resources from many of your favorite homeschool leaders, including Kirk Cameron, Heidi St. John, Andrew Pudawa, Rachel Carmen, Dorinda Wilson, and many more. Here are just a few of the testimonials from those who have enjoyed this online conference. Rachel said, "Best homeschool conference I have ever attended, filled my soul and definitely God-driven." Katie said, "This was absolutely amazing. I've been so encouraged and blessed. The one thing that stood out to me about each session is that every single one pointed us back to Jesus, back to Him who is faithful." And another homeschool mom said, "Thank you so much for all the value provided at this price. We are a big family with a super tight budget. My husband was encouraged, the boys listened in too. A relief to find this resource at such an affordable price with so much value. Register today for lifetime access to the entire conference for only $10 at homegrowngeneration.com. That's homegrowngeneration.com. We are back with Ginny. We are talking about 1,000 hours outside. And that is just such an amazing testimony that you have of how you came to this realization of spending time. It's amazing when you add up all of the hours. I think it's I'm forgetting the number right now, but the number of hours that our kids spend away from us if they're in school, and it's an astronomical amount of hours.
Yes,
I want to say 16,000 hours. I
I
think
think that's
that's the
right.
number.
16,000 seat hours. I think Israel Wayne talks about that.
Yes, yeah, and I mean,
Mhm.
it just is heart-wrenching to think about that. But to think about all of these hours that they can spend enjoying God's creation, enjoying our kids, and the things that that they can do outside, and the creativity that they can come up with. So talk about the benefits, because I know that there have been so many studies done on the benefits of spending time outside. What are some of the benefits that you have found for your family? But I know you've also done a ton of research on it at this point and found that there are many, many benefits to kids spending time outside.
There are so many benefits. And Yvette, it blows my mind actually because I'm continually coming across benefits. And I've continued to read about it because it's hard to get kids outside. There's a lot of
Mhm.
planning that goes involved, and sometimes a lot of cajoling, and you need to have snacks and the water and
Right.
extra clothes possibly. And when they're little, it's just a lot of work to kind of sync up with friends and that sort of thing. So I've continued to read about it over the years as a motivation for myself. It's cold, there's bugs, all these things. And even just recently, I've been reading about the power of sunlight. That's it.
Mm,
Like sunlight exposure. Um, it goes to your eyes, it hits your brain, it resets all your body systems. And what a simple thing, just
right.
exposing your body to sunlight. But I'm really passionate about like sort of the homeschool 101, the parents that are like a little they're afraid to sort of buck the norm and to do things a different way. And so what I've found, I used to be a public school teacher, is that parents are really concerned about their children academically, and
Hmm.
they're really concerned about them socially. Those are like the big things, like with homeschool. Am I going to screw up my child,
Right.
academically and socially? And so I like to talk about how, outside play is one of the best things that we can provide for our kids for both of those things. We don't know what jobs are coming down the road. It's like drone manager, or the fact that we're sitting right here. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought of this. Or, my sister-in-law is like a social media manager. These are new jobs.
Right.
And so our world is changing, and we want our kids to have strong, robust brains. We don't want to stuff them with facts. Things are constantly changing. And so what happens when kids go outside is the complex movements that they naturally do, that God put those instincts in them. So, they try and balance on a fallen log, or they try and climb a tree. That my kids are constantly trying new things. We're sledding this morning here in Michigan, and my youngest is 4. And so these are complex movements. She has to pull the sled up the hill. She has to figure out how to sit on it without the sled sliding away. And then
Right.
within a couple tries, she's like, I'm doing it no-handed. And so what's happening with all these movements is it's strengthening the nerve networks in the brain. It's making the brain work faster, and it's enhancing the function. So um, there's this book called Smart Moves: Why Learning is Not All in Your Head. So we
Okay.
think of academia, right? We think of like pencil and paper and teacher and chalkboard. But this book is about how movement is a precursor to all learning. So she gives this incredible statistic, Yvette. She says 76% of elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia. Just
Wow.
elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia, because
Wow.
complex movements are getting all those nerve networks to fire and to strengthen. And so she talks so much about the power of just simple movements. And so I noticed from the very beginning, we go outside, my kids are like, watch this, mom, watch this. And they're climbing higher, or they're jumping farther, or they're running faster. And all of that is going to give them lifelong advantages academically,
Yeah.
beyond a lot of the other things, like, when they play in the mud, or when they hang from a monkey bar, that strengthens their shoulders,
Mhm.
and it strengthens their core, and it strengthens their fingers. And so it's preparing them for their writing posture. It's
Wow.
strengthening their eyes. So there's a lot about, here's one, this is cool. You got your little baby, you strap them in the carrier, and with every step that you take, they're constantly having to use their eyes to work together. They're constantly readjusting their gaze with every single step. You've got the baby in the carrier. And so that's strengthening how
Wow.
their eyes work together, so that when they become a reader, they can track. They can track
Huh.
more easily on the page. So there's so many things um, that are counterintuitive, I guess, to our culture,
Right.
about how outside time helps kids academically. And those are lifelong advantages.
Yeah. That's incredible because I think we tend to think, well, if they're outside playing, then they're not being productive. They're not learning. They're not doing anything worthwhile. They're just messing around.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, that's always been kind of my thought. And not that I've thought it was bad to be outside, but I just thought, well, they need to be doing something productive.
And there's a
Riding your
quote
bike
that
outside
says,
is fun, but it's
right.
not productive.
I think in
And yeah, I mean, the studies are incredible that show these
mhm.
things.
I think in that same book, that Carla Hannaford book, now she's a pediatric occupational therapist. So they're on the front lines of sort of seeing the decline in skills of
Right.
children over the past several decades. It may be a different book, but it says what seems like a frivolous play environment as actually a hyper rich learning environment.
Wow.
So academically and then socially, right? This is what parents are concerned about because they maybe met some quirky kids and attribute it to homeschooling.
Right.
But I taught high school and there were quirky kids there,
Right.
So, our personality a lot comes from our, we're born with and we learn our social skills through family. And so parents are concerned about social skills. But when kids play outside, they are learning to create something out of nothing.
Mhm.
They're internally motivated to play. And so they're constantly compromising. So they learn how to assert themselves, but not too much because they don't want everyone else to quit. You know how it is when you're a kid and you like, I want it this way, but then someone else is like, well, then I'm going to quit.
Right.
So they're internally motivated to work on their social skills and their language skills. And you think like, well, 2 decades down the road and they're sitting in a boardroom, they have learned so much through these play experiences with other children that are often multi-age.
Mhm.
And so socially, I don't think you get more bang for your buck than through play, and especially outdoors because you have God has given this surplus of materials. They
Right.
call them loose parts, right? Anything that you can kind of manipulate and make believe with and form into something else.
Right.
And so there's enough sticks for everybody. And if everybody comes over there, someone wants this Barbie, or someone wants that, stuffed animal. But
Right.
outside, there's enough snow to go around, and
Right.
there's enough of these materials that God has given to spark the creativity and for kids to learn to work together. So, it helps kids with their whole development, but academically and socially, which seem to be like the two biggest ones that parents are concerned about. Homeschooling provides time
Yeah.
for parents to get their kids outside.
Yep, it sure does. So much good stuff, and so many more things I want to talk about in regards to being outside. We're out of time for this part of the episode, but we will be back on Wednesday to continue this conversation. So thank you, Ginny. We're going to continue recording here, be back on Wednesday. You guys, please continue to leave reviews for the podcast. That's such a blessing to us, and it really, really, really does help to get the podcast out there and helps more people to find the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. And thank you for those who have just left such generous and kind reviews. We are always so encouraged by that. And make sure that you share this with your friends as well. This is a really exciting and fun and important topic to be discussing. And so I would love for you to share this with your friends as well. Thank you, Ginny. We will be back on Wednesday.
Thank you.
And until then, have a great day.